Number 3. Jeanette Ralston. In early 1977, 24-year-old Jeanette Ralston of San Mateo, California, separated from her husband. The couple had a 6-year-old son. On January 31, 1977, Ralston and her husband had been separated for about 2 weeks. That night, Ralston went to the Lion's Den bar in San Jose, California with some friends. San Jose is about 30 miles southeast of San Mateo. Shortly before midnight, Ralston told her friend she was leaving the bar for a few minutes, but she would be right back. She was seen walking out of the bar with a man. She never returned to the bar. The next day, her partially dressed dead body was found in the back seat of her car that was parked in the parking lot of an apartment complex close to the bar. She had been strangled to death with the sleeve of her blouse. She had also been beaten. There was evidence she had also been sexually assaulted. It also appeared that the killer tried to set the car on fire, but failed. The police talked to Ralston's friends who were with her at the bar. The police used their descriptions of the man she left the bar with to make this sketch. However, no arrests were made and the case went cold. Then, in 2011, the San Jose Police Department and the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office started a cold case unit. In 2024, they were reviewing Jeanette Ralston's case once again. A thumbprint was found on a pack of cigarettes in Ralston's car. They had run the thumbprint through the FBI's Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, also known as AFIS, several times before, but they never got a hit. Matching fingerprints, even with computers, can be difficult for a variety of reasons, such as the quality of the fingerprint found at the scene. In August 2024, they resubmitted the thumbprint to the FBI. It turned out that the FBI's fingerprint system had been improved since the last time they ran the fingerprints. In August 2024, a match to the thumbprint was found. It was the thumbprint of 69-year-old Willie Eugene Sims, who lived in Jefferson, Ohio. In 1977, when the murder was committed, Sims was an Army private at Fort Ord, which was about 70 miles from San Jose. Sims' fingerprints were in the system because a year after Ralston's murder, he was convicted of assault to commit murder and robbery using a knife. He served 4 years of prison. The police said there were similarities between that attack and Ralston's murder. Additionally, Sims' mugshot from his 1978 arrest bore a striking resemblance to the sketch of the man seen leaving the bar with Ralston. After Sims was released from prison, he stayed out of trouble and moved away from California. In early 2025, the police got a warrant and collected a DNA sample from Sims. Sims' DNA was a match to DNA found under Ralston's fingernails and on the blouse that was used to strangle her to death. In May 2025, Willie Sims was arrested. He is currently awaiting trial. Sims is considered innocent until he's proven guilty in a court of law. Number 2. Katharina Brow. In May 1980, 48-year-old Katharina Brow lived with her husband in a mobile home in Ayer, Massachusetts. The morning of May 21, 1980, Brow's husband left for work shortly after 7 a.m. When Brow's daughter-in-law came by around 10:45 a.m., she couldn't get into the home. She called the police to do a welfare check. They got into the home and discovered it had been ransacked. The dead body of 48-year-old Katharina Brow was in the bedroom. She had been beaten with a blunt object and stabbed over 30 times. 5 of those stabs were to the heart. The murder weapon, a 3-inch paring knife, was found in a wastebasket. The police surmised that the motive behind the murder was robbery. Brow's purse was missing. Additionally, she had been hiding approximately $1,800 meant for a trip to Germany in her linen closet. That cash was also missing. Brow was known to carry around a lot of money with her, and there were rumors in the area that she kept a stash at home. The police didn't make an arrest in the days after the murder, and the case went cold. Then, 2.5 years after the murder, the police arrested 29-year-old Kenneth Waters. Kenneth was a local troublemaker who had spent time in juvenile detention centers and prison. At the time of the murder, Kenneth was a neighbor of Katharina Brow. He worked as a cook at a 24-hour diner that Brow frequented. People often saw her there with a large amount of money in her wallet. Kenneth moved out of state about 6 weeks after the murder with his live-in girlfriend, Brenda Marsh. Marsh and Kenneth split up a few weeks after moving. She then started dating a new man. The new boyfriend contacted the police and told them that Kenneth had confessed to Marsh that he had killed Brow. The boyfriend was hoping to get some reward money. The police confronted Marsh and she denied that Kenneth confessed. The police told her that she could be charged as an accomplice and that she would lose custody of her children. Marsh then told the police that about a week before the murder, Kenneth said he knew that Brow kept a lot of money in her home and he wanted the money. On the night of the murder, he left to work all night at the diner. Marsh said that she called the diner that night and she was told he wasn't at work. When he returned home the next morning, she noticed a scratch on his face. She asked him how he got the scratch and he told her not to worry about it. She saw police cars at Brow's home and told Kenneth about the police presence. He told her to tell the police that he wasn't there. One night, a few weeks after they moved, Kenneth got drunk and they argued. She accused him of killing Brow and he said, quote, "Yeah, what's it to you?" unquote. She broke up with him and moved away the next day. Kenneth then started dating a different woman, Rosanna Perry. The police also talked to Perry. She said that several times when they first started dating, Kenneth got drunk and said that the police had arrested him for murder, but they didn't have any evidence to charge him. Then 2 years later, he once again got drunk and he admitted to killing the woman. One of Brow's friends, Addie Ogden, worked at the diner with Kenneth. She also talked to the police. She said that Kenneth hated Brow. She said that when Kenneth was 10 years old, he broke into Brow's home. Brow reported him to the police and he was sent to reform school. Ogden also said about 6 weeks after the murder, Kenneth sold her a ring and a necklace. She claimed they belonged to Brow. She knew because she had given them to Brow as gifts. The police also believed they had physical evidence. 2 blood types were found at the crime scene, type B, which was the victim's blood type, and type O, which was presumably the killer's. It's believed the killer cut themselves in the frenzied attack. Kenneth's blood type was type O. Kenneth Waters went to trial in May 1983. His 2 former girlfriends and Addie Ogden testified against him. The blood type was also entered into evidence. Kenneth did not testify on his own behalf, but his lawyer presented evidence and had witnesses testify that he couldn't have committed the murder. The night before the murder, Kenneth worked a double shift at the diner. His work records and eyewitnesses placed him there. When he was done work, he went to court because he had been charged with assaulting a police officer. He had been accused of attacking an officer with a sickle. Kenneth did not return home until after the murder. Also, no physical evidence placed him at the crime scene. Fingerprints and hairs were found that didn't belong to Kenneth. Type O blood was found at the crime scene, and that was Kenneth's blood type. But type O is the most common blood type in the United States. Approximately 45% of people in the United States have type O blood. The jury deliberated for 10 hours. They found Kenneth Waters guilty of murder. he was sentenced to life without parole. Kenneth was adamant that he was innocent. His lawyers appealed his conviction several times. His second ex-girlfriend, Rosanna Perry, had recanted her statement that Kenneth confessed to the murder. But Kenneth didn't have any success with his appeals, and his lawyers stopped appealing. One person who believed Kenneth was his sister, Betty Ann Waters. Betty Ann and Kenneth were two of their mother's 9 children. Their mother was largely negligent. Betty Ann wanted to help her brother, but she was a high school dropout. She was a single mother of 2 and worked as a waitress at an Irish pub. But she vowed to help her brother. She obtained her GED, then attended college, followed by a master's degree in education before pursuing law school. It took her 12 years, but in 1998 she got her Juris Doctor, a professional graduate degree in law that qualifies graduates to take the bar exam and practice as attorneys. She believed that if she found the evidence for her brother's case and had DNA testing done on it, it would prove that her brother was innocent. However, the police and the district attorney did not know the location of the evidence. In 1999, Betty Ann was able to convince a court clerk to search the basement of the courthouse. Amazingly, they found a box from her brother's case. In the box was the murder weapon and several pieces of clothing. Betty Ann then worked with the Innocence Project and had the DNA tested. The DNA did not belong to Kenneth Waters. In March 2001, Kenneth was released from prison. He had served 18 years for a crime he did not commit. The district attorney decided not to retry Kenneth for the murder of Katharina Brow. On September 6, 2001, Kenneth had been out of prison for about 6 months. That night he had dinner at his mother's home and then he walked to his brother's home. He decided to take a shortcut which involved scaling a 15-foot fence. Tragically, Kenneth fell from the fence and cracked his skull. 48-year-old Kenneth Waters died from his injury. 21 years after Kenneth Waters was exonerated, the police reopened the investigation into Katharina Brow's murder. They had the DNA tested, but no match was found. They gave the evidence to the private DNA lab, Parabon Nanolabs. Using genetic genealogy, they narrowed it down to a set of brothers. The police soon settled on one of the brothers, Joseph Leo Bordeaux, who was 37 years old at the time of the murder. When Brow was killed, he lived in Framingham, Massachusetts, which is about 30 miles south of the crime scene. In 1975, 5 years before the murder, Bordeaux had been convicted of armed robbery in New Hampshire. It's unknown what sentence he received for the conviction. In 1987, Bordeaux moved to Maine and settled in the city of Ogunquit. Bordeaux died in 2004 at age 61. DNA samples were taken from his relatives, and experts determined it was most likely Bordeaux's blood at the crime scene. In June 2025, the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office announced that after 45 years, Katharina Brow's murder was officially solved. They said they found no link between Bordeaux and Kenneth Waters, who spent 18 years in prison for the murder. Betty Ann Waters rarely worked as a lawyer after exonerating her brother. She prefers to work at the same pub where she worked to put herself through college and law school. However, she was promoted to general manager. She occasionally volunteers with the Innocence Project, but she prefers the quiet life of working in the bar and being close to her family. Number 1. Barbara Schreiber and Darlene Zetterower. In the spring of 1975, Belinda Zetterower, who went by her middle name, Darlene, and Barbara Schreiber, both 14, from Hollywood, Florida, graduated from middle school. The pair of best friends were bright girls, but a bit mischievous. They told their parents they never hitchhiked, but they occasionally did. Days after graduating, on June 18, 1975, they were enjoying their summer break. The pair of best friends were last seen alive getting into a white van with 2 men in it who picked them up while they were hitchhiking. Their dead bodies were found the next day in the Florida Everglades in Dade County, lying side by side on the banks of a canal next to US 27. They both had been shot once with a .45 caliber handgun. One had been shot in the head and the other in the chest. No arrests were made and the case went cold. For many years, it was believed that the double homicide was part of a series of murders known as the Flat Tire Murders or the Canal Killings. The murders happened over a year in the neighboring Florida counties of Broward and Dade. The first murder associated with the series happened about 6 months before Darlene and Barbara were killed. On January 26, 1975, the dead body of 19-year-old Judith Osterling was found floating in a canal north of the Dade and Broward County line. The canal ran parallel to US 27. She had been beaten in the head, bound, and dumped in the river. The cause of death was drowning. Weeks later, on February 12, 1975, 23-year-old bank teller Barbara Stevens went missing from Coral Gables, Florida. She was going to visit a friend and did not return home. Her car was found in the parking lot of a store a few blocks from her home. 8 days later, her body was found in a vacant lot behind a department store about 2 miles from her car in South Dade County. She had been stabbed to death. Although Arietta Tinker was only 17 years old, she was married and had a child. However, in April 1975, she and her husband were separated. On April 8, 1975, Arietta went missing. 3 days later, her body was found floating in the Snake Creek Canal in Miramar, Florida. The canal is about half a mile from US 27. She had been drowned. Her 22-year-old husband was cleared as a suspect, and no other arrests were made. On June 13, 1975, Nancy Lee Fox worked a shift at a restaurant in Fort Lauderdale and then started walking home, which was about 6 blocks away. Tragically, she never made it home. 2 days later, her body was found in a canal next to US 27. She was killed by a blow to the back of the head with a blunt object. Less than a week after Nancy was killed, Barbara Schreiber and Darlene Zetterower were shot to death. Their bodies were found about 200 yards north of where Nancy's body was found. Less than a month later, on July 8, 1975, 14-year-old Robin Losh went missing from Fort Lauderdale. She was last seen walking near her home. Her body was found in the same canal where Nancy's body was found. Barbara and Darlene's bodies were found on the banks of the same canal. Robin's body was about a mile south of their bodies. She had also drowned. The police also considered the possibility that she had accidentally drowned. Weeks later, on July 22, 1975, 27-year-old Ronnie Gorlin went missing. Her car was found at a shopping center in North Miami where she had been shopping. One of the tires on her rented car had been slashed. Her body was found the next day in Graham Canal in Dade County, which is a short distance from US 27. It's believed she was beaten into unconsciousness, then assaulted, and finally dumped in the canal while she was still alive. Lisa Rapp went missing 8 days later from a shopping mall in Hollywood. Her rented car was found in the parking lot of the Hollywood Mall with a slashed tire. The next day, her body was found floating in the same canal where Ronnie's body was dumped. She had also been raped, sexually mutilated, and drowned. It was immediately apparent that the same man committed the last 2 murders. There was speculation in the media that they were connected to the other 7 murders, but the police refused to publicly speculate if a single serial killer was on the prowl. Unfortunately, the murders continued. On September 2, 1975, 15-year-old Mary Coppola went missing from Homestead. Mary had a history of running away from home, so initially her disappearance wasn't considered suspicious. She was last seen being dropped off at a counseling center for troubled teens. Her skeletal remains were found months later on New Year's Day in a vacant lot in South Dade. The cause of death could not be determined. In October 1975, the first homicide, the murder of Judith Osterling, was solved. 22-year-old Sue Jane Walter confessed she was involved in the murder. She said that her 28-year-old boyfriend, Clarence Carnival, killed her. They had employed Judith as a masseuse at a massage parlor they operated. Walter said that she and Carnival drove her to the canal. When Judith rejected Carnival's sexual advances, he beat her with his fists and then with a rock. He tied her up and dumped her into the river. Carnival was never charged because months earlier, on June 13, 1975, he was shot to death in his backyard. No one was ever arrested for his murder. The police said they do not think he was involved in the other murders. He definitely was not involved in 5 of the murders because he was killed before they were committed. Sue Walters eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 15 years of prison. In October 1975, 27-year-old Marlene Annabelli was on vacation in Fort Lauderdale from Reading, Pennsylvania. She went missing on October 22nd. Her body was found days later in a field in Fort Lauderdale. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death with a length of rope. On December 13, 1976, the dead body of a woman was found in a field near a canal in Broward County. The body was badly decomposed and the cause of death could not be determined. Her pants were ripped, so the police thought she might have been sexually assaulted. The woman has never been identified. It's believed she was between the ages of 18 and 35. She was white with brown hair, about 5'5", and weighed 120 pounds. She had been dead for approximately 3 to 6 weeks. 10 days later, on December 23, 1975, the dead body of a woman was found in a canal in Broward County. The woman could not be identified, and the cause of death could not be determined. She was identified 45 years later through genetic genealogy as 21-year-old Caroline Moody. She was last seen alive about a year and a half earlier, in July 1974, in Indianola, Mississippi, where she lived with her 2 daughters. It's unknown how her dead body ended up nearly 1,000 miles away in South Florida. In January 1976, 17-year-old Michelle Winters went missing while hitchhiking in Fort Lauderdale. 10 days later, her body was found floating in the Snake Creek Canal. It's the same canal where Ariette Tinker's body was found about 8 months earlier. She had been strangled to death. After the 14th woman was killed in about a year, including Judith Osterling, the murders came to a stop. For years, the 13 other cases remained cold. Then in August 2023, the police announced that after testing Darlene Zetterower and Barbara Schreiber's clothing for a 3rd time for DNA, they found the DNA profiles of 2 men. This matched eyewitness accounts who said they saw the girls get into a white van with 2 men in it. The police also said they may have matched one set of DNA in the FBI's combined DNA index system. It was the DNA of Robert Clark Keebler. Keebler had a lengthy criminal history in multiple states. His convictions include armed robbery, weapons offenses, aggravated assault, and sexual assault. He had never been considered a suspect until his DNA was matched to the crime scene. Investigators learned that Keebler was living in the area at the time of the murders and he drove a white van. A week after the murder, he was arrested while driving a white van after a traffic dispute. A gun was found in the van. Keebler could not be charged with Darlene and Barbara's murders because he had died in 2019. Then nearly 2 years later, the police announced that after 50 years, they were closing the case because they had identified the second man involved in the murders. He was Lawrence Stein. Like Keebler, Stein had a lengthy criminal record that involved convictions for violent crime. Stein died in 2005. The police did not explain how they connected him to the murders, other than saying they linked him to the crime with his DNA. The police did not reveal many details about the two killers, like their ages or how they knew each other. The police said they do not think that the two men were involved in the other flat tire murders. The police have also said they are not convinced that one person committed all the murders. All the murders happened within less than a year, and many of the victims were dumped in or near canals. However, the police think that the canals were just convenient dumping sites. They point out that the murders have different MOs. Some were kidnapped from parking lots, and others were killed while hitchhiking. The causes of death were also different. The known causes of death of the 13 victims, including Darlene and Barbara, were gunshot wounds, strangulation, blunt force trauma, being stabbed, and drowning. It is also possible that the women who drowned and the victims with unknown causes of death were not victims of homicide. At the time of this recording, the deaths of Barbara Stevens, Ariette Tinker, Nancy Fox, Robin Losh, Ronnie Gorlin, Elisa Rapp, Mary Coppola, Marlene Annabelli, the Broward County Jane Doe, Carolyn Moody, and Michelle Winters are a mystery. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Also, don't forget to watch our shorts on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Once again, thank you for watching.